So today I want to ask you guys a very serious question, and it's, did IGN fail us with their Cyberpunk 2077 review? It's a complex question. It's got a lot of layers to it, and what I mean by that is that I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm right. In fact, I'm hoping for your honest and unbiased opinions in the comments, because at the end of the day, I want to know if what I'm feeling is legitimate or if I'm just a gamer who's been scorned, right? And it's not just IGN, it's everyone. It's the whole industry and the process of reviews themselves. And honestly, I think at the start of this video, before anybody just kind of bounces out assuming what this video is about, I want to say that the real people I feel that got screwed the most in this is the devs who put their hard time and they crunched on this game, and they were the ones saying that the game wasn't ready to be released. And essentially those thoughts, that work, those hours fell on deaf ears, and the game was released anyway. The reason why that's so challenging is because now they have to fix the game in a bubble with the world watching. And honestly, I think what's really good in the silver lining out of all of this is that they're really hoping that this will get fixed. And then the other people, the other group that got screwed were the gamers who bought this game based off of these reviews from IGN, from all the YouTubers out there in the world. And those reviews were curated. What we were able to see, what they were able to share, were all curated based off of this restrictive NDA. The general thesis of this video is that IGN did fail. Yes, so did everyone else. But that's also because CDPR made it so. They really kind of dictated this and kind of made their own mess. And that's why we're probably going to be hearing about lawsuits soon, if by the time you're watching this, they haven't already been announced. Not just from gamers, but the shareholders and more. This is a real unfortunate mess. And while I'm enjoying the game, fearful that my save will be corrupted, while I am enjoying the game on Stadia, because that seems to be one of the clear winners out of all of this. We talk about who got screwed, who really won in this entire debacle. Seems like Stadia is the clear winner in terms of getting people to check out the platform. At the end of the day, I think reviews have to change, policies have to adapt, and honestly, I hope that going forward, gamers and even the industry, both the publishers and even media, get to learn from this situation. Now, how does this all come together? Well, first and foremost, I want to highlight something here. It's a series of tweets by Dan Stapleton. He's IGN's executive editor of reviews. And the reason why I think this is important, because I think essentially we're all somewhat too close to the situation. Obviously, IGN is a leading, very visible head of within gaming culture. Whether you like them or you don't like them for whatever reason, both legitimate or manufactured, it is still like who they are. They have essentially a lot of clout because they are one of the biggest in the industry. Even if you don't like them, you always kind of see people jump to the reviews, and that's what this is corely about. But anyway, Dan kind of starts off saying, just to be the 700th person to dunk on that Defector article written by someone who has no clue about how reviews or logic work, here's a sort of brief thread about some misconceptions around Cyberpunk 2077 and reviews in general. Where Dan went wrong in this first tweet is that he has now highlighted that Defector article. First and foremost, if you guys aren't aware, kind of resistance media, any kind of media that's like opposition, I guess is probably the right term. Opposition media is big money. It's media that is generated to be against something else. And now he has just kind of pointed to Defector Media and highlighted an article that I wasn't aware of, but I have now read that article based off of Dan's tweet alone. That's the weird, unfortunate side of social media. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so, all right, let's go ahead and dive further in. He says, yes, we agreed not to show our own footage before launch. I hated that. I fight against this restriction tooth and nail, and this is only the second or third time I haven't been able to talk to a publisher down from that ledge in a decade. It's usually about ridiculous spoiled paranoia. Now let's look at this tweet in and of itself for everything it states. Well, if we go actually to the review itself, and I pull it up. So first and foremost, they added this after the fact. They replaced the video version with the footage that they could. So now their review for the video itself, while the contents haven't changed, are now using that. How many of us, and I'm guilty of this, how many of us pull up a review, it doesn't matter by who it is, and scroll all the way to the dadgum bottom, not really reading the context. And I see reviewers kind of tweet and meme on this a lot, saying, did they even watch? Did you even listen? I get comments on videos saying, should I or shouldn't I? People want a simple yes or no answer when it comes to it because they're busy or many other reasons. Like, I can't sit here and predict every reason why somebody does this. For me, I usually like to start with the score and then I like to scroll up and find out why. That is just my curiosity. Doesn't mean it's essentially how it's going to work for everybody else, but this is where it is. And I think this is where it fails, because even though IGN did go back and put out a updated score for PS4 and Xbox One, that's still well after the fact that people have bought. Now, good on CDPR, Xbox, and PlayStation for offering reviews, but none of that should have ever needed to happen. None of this had to happen whatsoever, but obviously hindsight is 2020 in this crazy year of 2020. But note that what I think should happen, like if I was just offering general critique to his second tweet about it, this should be where this is also stated. If this is how people read reviews, and maybe I'm the only one who does this, let me know. But if this is how people read reviews, this is where it should be stated. There should be some kind of asterisk. There should be something as a part of this NDA that communicates that to the reader, to the viewer. Like, oh, okay, it got a 9. Only got a CPC, only showing certain things. Like, that way it's immediately apparent that now if I go ahead and scroll back up into the review, I can start reading out the different context and getting more information, or what they're probably hoping for is that you watch the video review itself. So just note, I think that there is something easily broken within the review process itself. And so the second side of this is that while Dan's hated that, it doesn't easily get communicated. Yes, somebody could infer that from consuming a ton of media, but that doesn't necessarily mean how it always ends up going on. But okay, let's go ahead and move on. Now, the idea that we're doing our audience a disservice by telling them this game is buggy but good, that we've only played it on PC so far and we're worried about how it might perform on console, as opposed to telling them nothing at all for a week after launch, is in words bonkers. Obviously referring to if they're last to publish their review. That is, as much as I've heard a lot of reviewers make the argument that people will wait for your review. From an individual YouTuber, most likely, with an audience. If people know who you are and what your general thoughts are, they will wait. They'll to see what you think about it. Most likely either to see if you agree or to justify their own purchasing costs, or they just like you and they're interested in your thoughts in general. That tends to be kind of the three options that you get. However, if you're late to the party, people have already kind of made up that decision. It's why you see live streams blow up when a big game comes out and then die off quickly. It's why you see numbers blow up. Being first is important, especially if you're trying to be or break into the review game, but that shouldn't stop you. So just pro tip, if you're looking at this video for some reason like, hey, how can I get started reviewing games? Just start writing, start reviewing, start posting, and go from there. But essentially, it's weird though. This is where I start to take issue with Dan and his viewpoint here, is because they're still the biggest in the field. Like if their margins are so small, and maybe they are, that they have to always be dropping these, I think ultimately it does call into question the quality of the review that you're getting. And I say this for Dan, I say this for everybody. And I think other people have said this as well. It doesn't mean that your review is going to be compromised. That's going to be an individual person. It doesn't, there's so many things that we can try and assume and apply, saying that because IGN does this, they're less credible. And I don't think that's the case. And you might have just heard two separate ideas there, but trust me, that's where that's where this gets complex. Is the line is so razor thin. The margin is so razor thin that somebody's going to make a decision. It's either trustworthy, it's not. It ends up becoming a binary decision as opposed to something that's more, RGB, something a little bit more of scale where there's a little bit more nuance to be applied. When it comes to gaming, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we have a lot of ability to have nuance in this case, but I'll leave it at that. Anyway, Dan continues on. Quite frankly, when you say that critics are worried about having to spend $60 on a copy of a game they're reviewing, makes you sound like you've never had a job. We care about something money can't buy, access to a game that isn't on sale yet. And that's true. Like, I have no problem purchasing a game. And this is where, I would say if somebody came to me early and said, hey, you can have access to this game early and you can get your impressions out first, then I would probably take it because the benefit outweighs any disadvantage. And at the same time, I also believe myself to be an honest person. And I think that would help me be able to communicate that effectively. Like, here's the context of I got this, or I got access early. Here's what I've seen. I usually would try to make sure that I set all the different, pieces of information so you can make the best decision possible. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with purchasing the money. I've even said, like, I'd be happy to get it early. I'll still pay for it. I have no problem paying for the game. And so typically what you'll see me do is I'll try to purchase a copy for, like, to give away or something like that, because I always feel like if I'm definitely recommending a game that costs money, it helps to have some kind of skin in the game. But IGN's running at a whole different level. They got jobs and people that, obviously rely on it. So it isn't necessarily a one-to-one from a YouTuber to kind of a big IGN industry. Now, he says NDAs aren't evil. I vehemently disagree with that to massive degrees. Almost every single game that it reviews has some form of NDA involved. This is good for publishers because they get it to time, but then maximum effect, and good for critics because they don't have to rush as much to be the first to post a review. I think from a we're not going to post like an embargo perspective is fine. NDAs is a non-disclosure agreement. You're not allowed to disclose what you agree to, unless I'm mistaken. And in fact, I probably should talk to Rich about that. But I guess maybe there's different variations of NDAs. I've done NDAs in business, like from business to business kind of perspective. Hey, we're going to develop this thing. Let's not talk about it, and it helps kind of keep things like that. But at the end of the day, I think especially in CDPR's case, yeah, like what they did. While I wouldn't go as far as to say evil, I kind of did earlier, but I'm saying, I don't think they're good. I don't think they're good for what it is. Yes, we were reviewing this game. Yes, it's coming early. The embargo is at this point. We can release it at this point. And that I think should be easily communicated and understood. And what they've done here with this is that they've they've curated that review so that it puts their best foot forward. And being first to publish a review is why they did us a disservice. And this is kind of the whole thesis here, is that because the interest and the money, like when you talk about the money, like being the first to post, if I was the first person who could post a review on Cyberpunk for, let's say, 15 hours or something like that. Let's say I had a 15-hour head start and I was the de facto review, like I'm sure I would have gotten a million views. That translates into money. That means that I'm incentivized to agree to whatever terms that they have. Same thing with IGN, same thing with everybody else. And while they might not necessarily think of themselves that way, and I think a lot of them have a lot of self-respect and are great reviewers, and still has that razor thin line where it is either a good thing or bad. It becomes binary too quickly, and essentially people make up their mind. Anyway, it says, man, if you're going to publish an article accusing critics of abandoning their principles of journalism, maybe do some basic research and get a source or two, like a journalist might do. And then he tags the individual, which then only highlights and makes it easier to find these articles. And that's kind of that's the ultimate problem, again, of social media and how our communication style is, it just brings it back up. It highlights it. In this video alone, I'm highlighting Dan. And in this video alone, Alberto Berncoco, he's now being highlighted as well. And so I brought some attention to these articles themselves, but hopefully some introspective or some thought when it comes down to it. Like life, especially the internet, ends up being an echo chamber. Gamers, publishers, even like IGN and reviewers, like we all have these different echo chambers. And I think it's easy to kind of get caught up in that. Like, how can, so-and-so think like this? But the world is complex and people are individually complex, and we have our own, obviously, issues and our strengths and things like that. And I think at the end of the day, while it wasn't IGN's core fault, I think their policies, and not just theirs, but everybody else's, the policies of this whole game is really what showed where the cracks were. And they were exposed by, obviously, the hype and the release. You can't really talk about these things critically. You can't have these conversations before because nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear you. Anybody coming in negatively talking about the issues with the development of CDPR is seen as opposition media, is seen as somebody who's just trying to, throw water on what's exciting and what's a fire. And it's only until things go bad that people are wanting to sit here and, that's when the mob, we want justice. We want things to be set right. I think hopefully at the end of the day, everybody, all reviewers, kind of take a look at these situations and they rethink it, or they rethink how they want to display it. So some of the information can get to the viewer who doesn't have that kind of time, who goes out and purchases the game and ends up regretting it, ends up being screwed, because while we have to say there is some level of personal responsibility that has to come into play each and every time, I think it isn't black and white. It's gray, and it's always going to be that way. And there's going to be such nuance that for each, like, depending on each individual, like, there could be a situation that could benefit them. Again, like I said, at the end of the day, hopefully we learn from this, we grow from this, and as an industry, we get better from this and are able to have a better process for video game reviews and how we consume video game news and media. And those are just my thoughts, obviously probably from a biased perspective as a YouTuber himself. I thank you guys for taking time to listen to these words. I'd love to know your thoughts, but this has been Brian for Ginger Prime. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you in my next video. But until then, take care. This video is sponsored by me, Ginger Prime. Hopefully you'll check out my podcast channel, Ginger Gaming Radio, which we have lots of guests, lots of great conversations, and even more highlights. Links are in the description below. Let me know what you think. Thanks.